All right, everyone, welcome back into another PrizePicks and Underdog video. Going to be touching on the top prop bets that we have today, mostly in NBA. Let's go ahead and get into it. But first, as always, I'd like to do a quick recap from yesterday. Now, yesterday, I did not give out a bet slip for the day. The video came out a little bit earlier than it typically does, but all in all, the data that was being pulled in yesterday was spot on. Good to have a good day data-wise on Taco Tuesday, where we are really focused on profit. So this is one that I showed you guys that I thought, had a really good chance to be a push. I did end up going with that one. Kind of sucked that in full cash, but all in all, still good. Here's one of the college basketball fantasy score props that popped in throughout the day. This was the best one, I believe, on the day. Another one that I believe was available during yesterday's video was this one, John Newman, the third for over points. And then the only prop that I really liked on the day was Derek White for less than 8.5 rebounds and assists, or I should say the data liked, so I was able to use that one. Then NBA-wise, Porzingis for over fantasy score was one of the better ones, so it was nice to hit that one as well. And now, obviously, that's kind of for example purposes. I always tell people the approach that I want people to do, especially if they don't have a big bankroll, if they're trying to build their bankroll, is to bet the 5 slips individually. So that's why I do that typically, so I can show you guys the process of that. On all, the ideal approach would actually be to do probably 6 slip bets, because you are essentially getting a free square. Those tacos have hit 80% of the time this year. And so if you give yourself one free square in the long term, by using the correct bets and whatnot, you're gonna get rewarded. But now, looking at the slate today, we have 9 games on the slate today. I'm gonna give you guys that game by game breakdown. Let's start out with the Pelicans versus the Wizards. Looking at right now, this is about an 8-point spread, 7.5 or so, whatever. 244 the over and under. So this is kind of a good thing. Washington is typically a team that can get blown out, and so the fact that it's only a 7.5-point spread, which does sound weird to say, I kind of like. And I would say probably part of that is due to Zion being a game time decision. We'll see if we're getting any props for him. Looking at the Wizards, they are still extremely banged up. DeLon Wright is out, Johnny Davis is out, Shamit's out. You also have Eugene Amorie, who is also out, which is big because if Gafford sits, then we're probably looking at Mike Muscala to get 20 minutes and probably Danilo Gallinari to get some minutes at the center position. Maybe even Kyle Kuzma. Maybe they go centerless, which to me would make J-Val a really good option tonight. Which, to be fair, guys, that being said, the Pelicans are coming in off of a back-to-back, which could be some concern there. That could be why maybe someone like J-Val doesn't get the minutes that we typically expect him to get. Maybe that would be why these other players don't get the minutes that we would expect them to get. Now, I am curious to kind of take a peek at the props that we are getting to see if it's going to be assumed as to whether or not Zion's going to sit, because last night I felt like there was a very good chance that KD was going to sit, and Devin Booker at 40.5 for points, rebounds, and assists to me was well worth the risk whether or not Kevin Durant played. Because Kevin Durant was out, we got a big edge there. That bumped up to 43.5. And so I want to see if we can gain a potential edge if Zion sits tonight. And it's a game against Washington. It is a back-to-back. It would make sense for one of the players to sit. And so really what I want to examine is going to be the points, rebounds, and assists for them. Just, I feel like that's a good indication of whether or not they are giving us the lines based off of Zion playing or not. And so, yeah, right now, Brandon Ingram, per 36 with Zion off the court. He averages 26.3 points, 5.4 rebounds, and 6.8 assists. So if we were to just take the points and assists there, again, about 7 assists, about 26 points, we're already basically at the over here. Tack on a few rebounds, we are seemingly getting an edge if Zion sits. If Zion plays, all in all, this is probably a little bit 2-point dependent, but I do like the fact that the data is already favoring the over there. He would get a nice little bump in usage. The usage actually is a big bump, 7%. So to about 33%. So that is definitely a good thing. Let's look at the next player on here. Really, I want to see CJ McCollum, because he is at 30 for points, rebounds, and assists, 30.5, I guess. He is someone that when we look at the data, we're not going to have as much of a sample size. It's still well over 100. I love that. His usage rate goes up 9% with Zion off the court to also about 30. He averages 24.4 points, 4.6 assists, 4.6 rebounds, and about 7 assists as well. So yes, if Zion sits, we are seemingly getting a massive edge here. So I'm a little bit surprised that they are giving us those props. Now we can take a peek at the injury report as well to see they currently have Zion listed as expected to play. That's what this green means. This is coming from RotoWire. So it is risky, but it could be, well worth the risk if he does end up sitting. Again, that's why we're not getting the props for Zion, but I do find it really surprising that we are getting props at all for the Pelicans, because it's a big mover. J-Val is just very much minutes dependent. Probably don't want to touch him at all. Honestly, I think he will have a big game. And if he does continue to get around 30 minutes, and I am curious, how many minutes did he get yesterday? 35. Wow. Wow, that is a lot. Now, I know it's Minnesota and they run out 2 bigs, but if we get J-Val in a close game-ish, obviously we're worried about blowout run, but man, if we can get him 35 minutes, that's awesome. And then Herbert Jones, I don't really care for. His per 36 production would suggest maybe the over. It is a little bit tighter. All in all, I think we could bank on him having a good game. So I do think there's a slight edge to at least bet Ingram, Herbert Jones, and CJ McCollum for over. And I do like the data, although slight, is favoring the over for all 3 of those players. Let's go ahead and get into Washington. Well, I'll show you guys the rest of the prop bets that we are getting here as well. Ingram assists. I don't feel like we need touch, but that is a good EV bet almost. Always we're looking for a 54% likelihood for a bet to hit. I did mention that his per 36 production with Zion off the court is about 6.8 assists. So there is a slight edge there. Rebounds and assists does seem to be correct. Points, probably correct. Points and assists for CJ McCollum, we could bet the over as well. So decent edges there. I don't want to spend too much time on one game. So let's go ahead and get into Washington, or one team. Let's get into Washington. Washington's, they're always going to be interesting, guys. If they keep a game close, sure, a lot of the prop bets that we're getting on them are too thin. The issue is that they never keep a game close. It's really rare that they do. But again, when they do, you can be getting a big edge. Good example against Philly, they kept it close. Against Orlando, they kept it close. Someone like Tyus Jones was then undervalued. So there is a little bit of an edge there if you can game script it right, but it's also very ugly. And looking at this, it might be a better matchup for them, but Jordan Poole has been terrible. We all know that. We don't want to bank on him doing anything. And with that, for someone like Tyus Jones, if you were trying to do rebounds and assists, it doesn't really make sense to me because you're really just banking on Kyle Kuzma or one of the other players like Jordan Poole to shoot the basketball well, and I just don't want to bank on that. Kyle Kuzma has at least been a consistent fantasy producer, but again, a lot of the production for these players is predicated on whether or not the game stays close. Gallinari, questionable to play in this one. And again, we're probably looking at Mike Muscala again at least 20 minutes, which I don't love. I think that helps J-Val out, but as we saw, J-Val probably a little bit too high for the props that we were getting for him. So let's go ahead and move on into the next game. Looking at the next game, it's going to be the Sixers versus the Pistons, another game that has a high likelihood to be a blowout. The Sixers, no, they're not. I was going to say they're coming in off a back-to-back. Never mind. They're not. But 12-point spread, ugly game. Looking at the injury report, Detroit is pretty banged up. So we got Bagley out, we got Duren out. That's not good, because that's going to mean James Wiseman and Isaiah Stewart has some good prop bets. And guys, last game for the Pistons, I thought we had a bad beat, or I thought we were going to have a bad beat, because Isaiah Stewart was starting kind of as expected, but his under fantasy score was one that was really popping up, but he started at the center position. I'm like, oh boy, that could probably help him. James Wiseman's going to the bench. There's just a couple more opportunities for rebounds and whatnot. So that was interesting. But we can see the best prop bets that we are getting for Detroit tonight are kind of 2 fantasy score props. And just as an FYI, guys, I made a small tweak to the fantasy score equation. Pretty much the percent likelihood for the average sportsbook line is putting less of an emphasis on the turnovers and the the turnovers and the blocks and steals props that are being pulled in, because to me, that's one where we don't get it for every single sportsbook. It's also one that the sportsbooks seem to agree on the lead. And so it was kind of, in some situations, it was really shifting the edge rating for a player based off of how many turnovers they would get or blocks and steals that they would get. And so I had to shift down the weight of those specific props for fans. And so I think we're going to see the edge ratings be a little bit more lower, which I think is a good thing. In a weird way, it gives me more confidence in the prop bet. It's like Bogdanovich being under fantasy score, albeit I actually kind of think Bogdanovich fantasy scores is one that I don't love to touch, because he is someone that is getting heavy minutes, a little bit shot dependent, but it does really matter who they run out in terms of starting lineup, because I think if Thompson shifts back into the starting lineup and he gets 33 minutes, that is something I would love to be on. He is someone that I think would still get run on in a blowout, whereas Bogdanovich, I don't see him getting run in a blowout. And so 12-point spread, I can see why the data likes the under here, especially given the fact that over the last 2 games, he has gone the under. And again, if this game is a blowout, it makes sense why he wouldn't get the over. Now, the other one that we have there is Isaiah Stewart at 22.5. Again, this was at, I think, 23.5 the other day. I felt like there was going to be a bad beat because it was a good matchup going against Indy. I actually want to take a peek at his minutes for you guys, because I think that could be something that's very crucial to pay attention to tonight. 33 minutes in that game. Yeah, 34. That seemingly, whoops, wrong slide there. That seemingly is an edge that I don't see being there if he starts at center. And we take a peek at the projected starting lineup. He is projected to start at center. So that to me is something I don't want to bet. I know it's a matchup with Joel Embiid. He'll probably get into foul trouble. The minutes probably won't be there, especially if the game doesn't stay close. I get that. And all in all, It's not one that we feel like we need to force in there because it's only 53.7%. Sure, if it was 55 like Bogdanovich, then maybe. Now I do want to call out Thompson as well. If he's someone that's going to be starting, I really like his props that we are getting. Maybe honestly, fantasy score, I know the data doesn't love it. Maybe points for him. And again, for me, it's more or less, I think the minutes should be there for him, regardless of if it's a blowout. To me, that makes logical sense. They're a young team. Get your young players minutes. So, like the older vets that are coming in off the bench, or Bogdanovich, even Kevin Knox to an extent, like it would make sense for those guys not to get minutes and him to get minutes. But I do like the fact that he is starting because we should be locking in some minutes. And we look at the minutes that he's projected to get, 30. Love that. I know you guys are seeing the average minutes. That's really because of the start of the season before they got healthy. And so, yeah, we get into Philly. It's definitely not a spot that I love. So what I find fascinating is that we can see Tobias Harris, points, rebounds, and assists, the over is being favored at 21.5, but then the under fantasy score is being favored as well. Definitely fascinating there. I don't feel like we need to touch anyone here. Maybe Maxey, where the average sportsbook line is favoring it as basically a push, but at 27.3 points. On Underdog, they already bumped it up to 27 as a result. So at 26.5, that's a small edge that we are getting. But let's take a peek at both of these props that we are getting there for that team. And so, yeah, Tobias Harris with everyone healthy does kind of take a back seat. Heck, we just saw what I would say is a similar matchup against Washington, where, you know, the games were blowouts-ish. I mean, this game wasn't, but he didn't really need to be productive because everyone else is going off. Like when Embiid's out or when Maxey's out, then we expect him to step up. But given the current nature of the squad, I don't see him needing to step up into a bigger role. And so I could see betting the less than fantasy score. It might be a little bit too thin, might not be one that you love. Do you want to call it Maxey as well? Points wise, I think that is one that does make sense as well. To bet the over, I do agree with that. 29 in the last game against Detroit. Game did end up being a little bit closer than you would think, but still 39 minutes in that game. Love that. If the game's a blowout, he's going to be part of the reason as to why. Although that game is probably a little bit too thin to go crazy with. So let's go ahead and get into the next game. We got the Hawks versus the Raptors, a much more appealing game. 240 for the over and under, 1.5 point spread. We love to see that, guys. Looking at the injury report, the Raptors are pretty good to go. Looking at the Hawks, yeah, Trae Young, game time decision. I would assume that the line that we are getting would suggest that he's going to play. Hunter, game time decision. We'll see about that. And then Jalen Johnson, he is listed as out. And just looking at the projected starting lineup here, yeah, Trae Young expected to play. Hunter being in or out doesn't shift too much. I mean, Bay would get a slight bump, but that's really about it. So we go ahead and start out with Toronto real quick. Toronto, I'm not personally seeing much. Like if we want to bet these over turnovers, you can. To me, that's a little bit too thin. And then we go down that list. We're not really getting that many good props for them. So I feel like we can just go ahead and move on. We're not getting any fantasy score props for this game just yet. And for Atlanta, we also are not getting that many good props, and which is surprising for a game in which the over and under is that high. So definitely something I would say once the data is updated, come back into the 9-to-5 cheat sheet if you guys are 9-to-5 members. If you're not, you can sign up $10 a month. Link it to join us in the description below. But that would be something that I think we could potentially get an edge on is the fantasy score, because as we see right now, nothing showing right now. So that's another game where I feel like we can kind of just move on past. So let's go ahead and get into the next game. We got the Hornets versus the Heat. I'm a little bit surprised by the line that we're getting here. 8-point favorites for the Heat. I would have actually thought that was more, but I know that they're banged up. I know Bam and Hero are both out, but the Heat's weapon, if you will, other than Jimmy Butler, have really stepped up lately. And then you also look at Charlotte. They're a little bit banged up right now. Mark Williams being a game time decision, obviously the middle of the ball being out. That's interesting. So again, let's take a peek at the projected starting lineup here for these teams. Yeah, Mark Williams not expected to play. And so we're going to get Nick Richards. And I believe these two teams just met. Yeah, they did. Okay, so we can kind of draw some conclusions from that matchup. And actually, guys, I feel like I phrased that poorly. We don't want to draw conclusions from that matchup, but like if there's a prop bet that we're seeing that the data likes, then we could probably get behind it. So just looking at it, we can see the minutes. Jimmy Butler had a great game, but not exactly like elevated too much. It's really just Martin stepping up and Duncan Robinson stepping up. I mean, he shot the basketball a ton. You had Hawkes coming off the bench, only getting 18 points. I say only because he only had 1 assist. Otherwise, Kevin Love got a lot of minutes, but that was specifically because Orlando Robinson got into foul trouble. And then we look at minutes for everyone else. PJ Washington has strangely stepped up. And I really do like him more if he's coming in off the bench, because he's kind of getting that usage with the second unit, which is very elevated. If he starts, I kind of like him less. So hopefully if we have a prop bet for him that's popping up, Again, I would like it better if he's coming off the bench. From there, we can see heavy minutes for the starters, not named Nick Richards. He didn't have a good game. Rozier, heavy minutes. Miller, you'd probably want a little bit more. Bridges, 34. So I would say that's good stuff. At least we know that the minutes are going to be there. So taking a peek at the props that we are getting, let's start with Charlotte. Miles Bridges, I'm kind of fine with the over there, 2.5 assists. We can see on this season that is exactly what he averages. Only 1 assist in that game against Miami. Again, probably a game that maybe does stay close. And all, given the fact that he was that under his average last game, it would make sense why that would spike up in this game. From there, the prop bets that we were getting, I don't exactly love. Again, I think PJ Washington would be one that is probably going to be undervalued, more undervalued than he should be. Tough to say what we'd want to go in on for him if we get those lines, but I do expect him to get 30 minutes if this game stays close. Expect him to get around 10 shot attempts. Really, if his points, rebounds, and assists is below, I would say 21.5, I'd probably be fine betting the over there. And then jumping into the Miami Heat here. Miami Heat, we are seeing Caleb Martin for over points, rebounds, and assists is a pretty good prop bet that we are getting. 26.5. At 27, the average sportsbook line is still favoring the over. So at about 53%. That is a pretty strong one. We also are seeing potentially Kyle Lowry for over 9.5 points. Again, these two teams just met. We can kind of take a peek at what happened last game. Kyle Lowry 1 for 6, had a terrible night shooting. That is not something that I think anyone would expect to continue. 0 for 2 from free throw range, like you would expect. At least 2 for 6 there, probably 3 for 6 there. And then, to make a couple of free throws, like bad night. If you guys don't want to trust that, I kind of get it. Caleb Martin did go off. And Caleb Martin is someone that I think we can project to get heavy minutes because Highsmith being out as well. That's a big thing for him. And so we look at his per 36 production, averages about 20.1 points, 7.1 rebounds, and 3.3 assists. So right here, he should be able to get the over just on his points and rebounds at 27 on average. He should be able to get the over there, tack on 3.3 assists. That's pretty awesome. Now, he is someone that fantasy score-wise probably won't pop up because turnovers, he averages 2 turnovers per 36. And so we can see, the data has him projected at 1.5. Now they're favoring the under there, but that is something that, again, once the fantasy score pops up for him, we're probably not betting him. That's a good example of that because the turnovers would most likely outweigh the steals and blocks. So now moving on to the next game, we're going to have the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Indiana Pacers. We got the revenge game. Probably not from the in-season tournament. But the Bucks are going to be 6.5 point favorites. Insanely high over and under. I mean, it's crazy how many games we are getting where the over and under is over 250 this year. And sure, it's basically Atlanta and also the Pacers, but still pretty crazy how that's been happening a bunch. Looking at the injury report, Jalen Smith still out, Andrew Nembhard's out. Looking at this, Pat Connaughton's going to be out as well, which means Malik Beasley is someone that I probably like. And then Jay Crowder for the Bucks is going to be out as well. So looking at it, I just mentioned that I thought Malik Beasley would be someone that I'd want to be on for the over fantasy score, just points, rebounds, and assists. The data does not like that, guys. The data is actually saying bet the under for Malik Beasley. And I don't know if I exactly agree with that, simply because he is someone that is going to get heavy minutes. And if he's getting heavy minutes again, like we're expecting in this very high game total, I have no idea why the under would be favored the way that it is now. I know against the Pacers, a very, very similar matchup. He did get the under there, so maybe there's something there. But all in all, I'm actually pretty surprised at this line that they are presenting to us today. With that, that's kind of the best one that we have. We see Middleton for under 4.5 assists is kind of popping up, 53% chance for that to hit. I mean, that's really the only big edge bet that we have. So let's go ahead and move on into the Pacers. Looking at Indy, again, these two teams just met. We can see Halliburton for over 3.5 threes is popping up as a really good bet. If that's a bet that you guys want to make, you could. Taking a peek at the game log, that's not going to be exactly something that gets you excited about. 3 straight games is not getting the over, but at the same time, that's probably why the over is being favorited as much as it is. He's still shooting about 6 3-ball attempts. We probably want a little bit more against Milwaukee. Shot 9, made 3, which actually is a decent rate. What are they expecting from him? I guess the game to be higher scoring than it was last time, which is crazy to say that a game at 247 last time out, that they're expecting the game to be 11 points higher, right? That's just crazy. That was a high scoring game already. But again, if it does get that high scoring, I can see why the data would favor one more 3-pointer made for something like Halliburton. And also the minutes, I don't know what to expect minutes wise. 33 minutes in that last game against Detroit. I think that's going to be something that we start to see where the players during the in-season tournament, LeBron, AD, and whatnot, where they had heavy minutes, I kind of expect those to come down. So all in all, if you guys like that bet, by all means, go for it. If you don't, I kind of get it. From there, Buddy Hield for over or under rebounds and assists is one that's popping up. I'm actually okay with betting the under there. I feel like that's a pretty good one. Going against the Bucks, he he had a really good game, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, but that was definitely out of the norm. We can see kind of what he averages on the season. I think that's what we'd be more expecting. And so for us to get this line at 7.5, you look at his averages on the season, again, we can just put these at even or at, round down and round up. 6. He averages 6 rebounds and assists per game. So at 7.5, and if we look at his projected minutes, 30, which is better than his average, I don't think we're really expecting him to do too much tonight. So I can get behind that one. But again, with this game total being as high as it is, like you would almost want to be kind of just smashing, I don't know, really betting a lot of the over probably fantasy scores. So it's kind of crazy that we're not getting that. Now, Miles Turner feasted against the Bucks the last time out, and maybe that's something you guys like. Halburn, his fantasy score was kind of low compared to how he played last game against them. It's definitely interesting there, but all in all, I think we stick with the good EV bets that we are getting for this game. So moving on to the next game, we got the Lakers versus the Spurs. Surprisingly, a very close scoring game. So I'm wondering if there's any injuries here. 230.5 is going to be the over and under. And so what I mean by that is, like, we have seen Anthony Davis and LeBron on the injury report every single game, and now we're not. That's kind of strange to me. Back end of back-to-back, we just saw LeBron log 40 minutes in that game. Like, that is crazy to me. I'm expecting their minutes to get reduced at some point. 37 for Anthony Davis, like coming in off the heavy minutes in that in-season tournament for both of them. The fact that it's a back-to-back, I kind of expect their minutes to get reduced. I'm actually curious if the data is going to agree with that, but if they're still getting heavy minutes like that, they'd probably be a team that we'd want to go in on. Now, right now, we're not getting any Lakers props, which to me makes sense. Let's take a peek at the Spurs. Like, just because I'm expecting one of those two to sit. Again, heavy minutes back-to-back, it would make sense to me. Looking at the prop bets that we're getting for the Spurs, not that many good ones just yet. All in all, this honestly just feels probably like a pass up. Like, I'm okay just passing over the Spurs right now. They're all healthy, which to me makes their minutes a little bit more difficult to predict on a night in and night out basis. So yeah, moving on to the next game, we got the Rockets versus the Grizz. 213 for the over and under, so a very low game total. 6.4 is going to be the spread. Looking at right now, the Rockets are pretty much good to go. The Grizzlies are getting a little bit healthier, which sounds weird to say, but they are getting a little bit healthier. Smart and Kennard still out. And if you guys have been paying attention to the Grizzlies, like, they've been a super annoying team in terms of predictability there. And so I don't know what I like, honestly, out of them. We can see David Rodney for over 4.5 rebounds is a decent one. I was curious about his projected minutes at 24. We can see he averages about 4.2 on the season. So maybe gets a slight bump in minutes in this game. We got 29 minutes in the last game. Was able to get that over. And we can see lately he has been kind of crushing the over. Maybe there's something there. Maybe. I'd have to check and see if the rotations change. But I can see why the data would kind of be wanting to ride the hot hand with that, if you will, for over 4.5 rebounds. From there, that's really the only good one that we're getting. So let's go ahead and take a peek at Houston. Houston, we have Fred VanVleet for under or over 12.5 rebounds and assists. We can see Underdog has already bumped it to 13. So if that one's still there, we are seemingly getting a slight edge. Jabari Smith Jr., I think, is kind of an interesting one at 23.5 for points, rebounds, and assists. Personally, I see this as a good spot for him. I would expect him to have a good game. 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists to me seems too low given the matchup. Last game against Memphis had 18 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. So like really crushed it in just points and assists. Or points and rebounds, sorry. Again, I don't always like to use the previous matchup. I feel like that can lead to some confirmation bias. But all in all, the minutes have been there for Jabari Smith lately. I will say if Eason is out in this game as well, that's just going to lock in those minutes for Jabari Smith most likely. We can see 27 minutes in the last game for Eason. If he is out, that's some minutes that I just think would lock in to Jabari Smith getting at least 30 minutes. And so to me, this is probably one of my favorite bets today individually, like just not for PrizePicks purposes. Again, PrizePicks purposes, we're shooting for 54% or better for most of the bets. I think this makes for a great FanDuel DraftKings bet because, again, I don't know if the data will respond to it, but if we get news that Eason's out, I personally like that better because I think that just locks in those minutes. So now going ahead and moving on into the next game here, we got the Nets versus the Suns. 2.5 for the spread, 227 for the over and under. Looking at it, I'm actually curious as to really the injury report here. I don't think we're going to get any prop bets. We kind of gained an edge last slate with Booker, kind of assuming that Katie was going to sit. Now it's the back end of back-to-back. So now we got to figure it out. Grayson Allen, groin, game time decision. Kevin Durant, ankle, game time decision. We can take a peek at the projected starting lineup. They are both still out. So all in all, maybe we can take a peek at the minutes from the last game last night and kind of just assume that those are going to be the minutes again. So Booker played 36 minutes. I think we can kind of expect that again. Did get into 5. Did get 5 per personal fouls in that game. I personally would have thought he would be closer to 38 minutes, honestly. So maybe the fouls kind of cut away on his minutes a little bit. Yusuf Nurk got punched in the face by Draymond Green. Honestly, how is Draymond not, like, he needs to get suspended by, like, I'm not even joking, half the season. Like, you can't keep doing that. He keeps getting away with it. It's like at some point, you literally just need to suspend him a hefty amount because it's just a bad look. I'm kind of just sick of it, honestly. I mean, how do you choke someone and blatantly punch someone in the face and not get suspended for half the season, especially when you punched your teammate in the face the previous season? It's just like, yeah, I'm not even like, I'm saying half of the season remaining. It's not as many, like not a full season and half the amount. It's like with the games remaining, suspended for half. It's just bad. But yeah, Yusuf had a good game, played 30 minutes. We love that. If it's 30 minutes again in this game, like that is something we're interested in. Bradley Beal, I'm very, very interested in whether he's going to play or not. You know, he's someone that has been battling injuries this whole season, played 27 minutes in that game, which was great, but now it's the back end of back-to-back. I personally think it would make so much more sense for him to not play tonight or for him to play limited minutes. Then someone like Eric Gordon would really step up into a high usage rate role. So definitely fascinating as to what's going to occur. And I want to point out that Me Too, I probably butchered that name. He played 25 minutes in that game. And so if he's someone that's going to continue to get minutes, that to me can be something of interest. And so as they should, they're not giving us prop bets. I'm actually curious as to if Underdog is giving us any lines for this game for this team. You know, typically Underdog's a little bit faster with game props out, but yeah, smartly, they're not giving us props for that one either. While we're here, I'll just show you guys the ones that are popping up as good ones. Not too many EV bets there for Underdog just yet. But getting back into prize picks, we'll talk about Brooklyn. So looking at Brooklyn right now, my issue is that they are so difficult to predict on a nightly basis that I'm kind of fine passing up on all of them. Now, at least Mikal Bridges has been much more consistent lately. He's like the one player we can count on. But at the same time, all it takes is Cam Thomas to get hot shooting the basketball. And then probably Mikal Bridges is not going to have a good game. To me, these guys are going to be stayaways. Maybe we get Nick Claxton, fantasy score as a good prop bet. But for now, I'm just staying away from them. And then we go ahead and get into the last game on the slate tonight. The Knicks versus the Jazz. 6-point spread, about 228 for the over and under. Looking at the injury report, Mitchell Robinson's out. And then also quickly is a game time decision. Guys, those are two big pieces of news. I'm looking at the Jazz. Also, I don't think we're going to get any lines because Walker Kessler is a game time decision. Lauri Markkanen, game time decision. John Collins, game time decision. We do know that Jordan Clarkson is out, but like literally their four best players are projected to be out or injured. So like Keontae George is someone that we benefited from 2 nights ago for over, like, I think it was 4.5 assists. Maybe that's something we're looking at if it pops up, but I kind of expect guys like Julius Randle just feast tonight, and probably Jalen Brunson. Dante DiVincenzo is going to get more minutes. To me, that's interesting. He's someone that I like when he gets more minutes. And so taking a peek at the props that we are getting for the Knicks, again, I do think that I want to be going in on, let's just show points, rebounds, and assists again. I do think I want to go in on these guys because I do think that they're not going to be properly valued. RJ Barrett, a little bit too much shot dependent, but I think we're going to get some good lines fantasy score wise for Jalen Brunson and then also Julius Randle. So it might not seem like much with Quickly and Mitchell Robinson being off the court, or even just Robinson being off the court, but Julius Randle averages a 30% usage rate with Mitchell Robinson off the court. He averages 28.1 points, 8.8 rebounds, 5.3 assists. So doing the math on that, this should probably be at like 41.5. So we are getting a slight edge there for the over. The data doesn't like the over, so maybe just one that you're staying away from. And then I do think there's an edge there, but all in all, probably not worth betting. He does average 46.5 fantasy points per 36. So if the fantasy score prop comes out and is much lower than that, probably something we can look at. Jalen Brunson, he is someone that averages 38 fantasy points per 36, 24.4 points, only 1.7 rebounds, so that's not good, and then 8 assists. So we're not getting an edge there, and so probably not much. Now, that was with Quickly and Mitchell Robinson off the court. If we do just Mitchell Robinson off the court, it's a lot more minutes going into the sample size. Randall becomes even more appealing, and then Jalen Brunson is basically the exact same. So all in all, probably not liking Jalen Brunson for points and rebounds tonight, and that's really the best prop bet that we are getting for the Knicks, I would say right now, is the points and rebounds. We look at the other ones. Sure, Randall over steals. I don't love that. And then for Utah, they're not giving us any props just yet. It makes sense why they wouldn't be. So I do just want to show you guys some other prop bets that we are getting out there. College basketball specifically, I think we're getting a couple of good ones there. At least at the start of the day we were. We're still getting this one here. Trevin Cannell, I think that's how you say his name. Good EV bet, 10.5 points. The day is favoring the over there. That's a solid one. We see Sky Clark for under fantasy scores, one that's popping up. And then Ryan Kalkbrenner for under his fantasy score. I do want to point out that the projection data really likes the over there. I don't love that. But let's take a peek at those three. So Kalkbrenner for fantasy score. I'm curious about the matchup with UNLV. And so to me, this makes sense. It's a game that's projected to be a blowout, and maybe that's probably why they're favoring the under for Kalkbrenner there. And then we look at here, Trevin Cannell. Again, I think that's how you say his name. We can see he's been very consistent in terms of getting to around 10 points or so. And to me, that's encouraging. Like, we are getting a safe number for the line that we are getting. So where the day is favoring the over, it probably makes sense why we are getting that line. It's projected to get 12.1, which I like to see. Very high likelihood for this prop bet to hit. Pulling up the game total, BYU's projected to win by almost 27 points. So he's probably going to be part of the reason as to why. And then Sky Clark for under fantasy score. That's the only other good one that we are getting. The projection data also likes the under there. Let's take a peek at that one. Again, this is probably a game that's projected to be a blowout going against Arkansas State. I'm just assuming that. No, what? Whoa, is Arkansas State good, or is Louisville that bad? 3.5 point spread? Interesting. All in all, though, we can see Sky Clark has been someone that has been struggling. Really has only crushed the over once. Other than that, been very close. So real quickly, guys, before we get into the bet of the day, I just updated the data. We got some more fantasy score props popping it in there, and I probably agree with these a little bit more. Duncan Robinson for over fantasy score. You know, he is someone that has been playing better, especially with those players off the court. I feel pretty good about his over. And then we also seen Nick Richards for over 24.5 for a fantasy score is seemingly a good one as well. Now, Nick Richards DFS wise was extreme chalk in that game against Miami. Very much a disappointment. And I'm saying that because was the public that wrong? Tough to say. He did get 26 minutes, which I would say is a little bit of a concern. Only 6 points, only 6 rebounds. Like, that seems to be a mistake. All in all, you would have thought he would have had a good chance to get the over there. And so I think I can agree with the over fantasy score there as well. Maybe a little bit too thin, but we can see the best prop bets that we are currently getting on this slate. I'll show you guys underdog or PrizePicks real quick. Just the best prop bets that we are getting. EV only. Again, that's where the lines match up. So we got a heavy one for hockey assists. I don't really love touching the assist props. We see Russell Wilson for under 1.5 passing touchdowns is one that's popping up right now. Halliburton for over 3.5 threes is a good EV bet. We got Malakin for under assists. Again, I don't like touching those. Buddy Hield still for under his rebounds and assists. That's one that I actually don't mind. I can get behind that one. We have the college basketball prop that I mentioned, and that's really it for EV betting. And so for this specific video, I would say Halliburton I'm good with, Hield, and then Trevin I'm good with those three specifically because they're tonight. So let's go ahead and give you guys, well, I'll show you guys underdog real quick as well, and then I'll give you guys the bet of the day. And so looking at this, we're getting one really good bet. That's going to be the college basketball one. Don't chalk, buddy. Come on, get it done for us. So real quickly as well, I just want to thank everyone that has been signing up for Underdog using the 9-to-5 promo for new users. That's awesome. I know I don't have an Underdog bet today, but that does not go unnoticed. And I just want to say thank you to you guys. Thanks to have used that promo code. You don't have to do that, but I do appreciate it. Again, it doesn't go unnoticed. So only a prize pick slip for the bet of the day today. Again, we're not getting that many good prop bets right now for Underdog. Again, that changes throughout the day. We'll see kind of what happens. Do want to point out by now, you guys probably know I hate betting the less than fantasy score props, and we're getting 3 of those. I don't exactly love that. Again, I think this one is very much predicated on Creighton blowing them out. This was a good example. I think it was Reese last night where Maryland just absolutely blew out their opponent. And if the player would have got his typical minutes, he probably would have got the over. But since it was a blowout, the over didn't hit. That's kind of what we're hoping for here as well. Sky Clark, supposed to be a close game. You can see why the data likes the under. This is a good EV bet. And really, if you guys want to do only EV bets, like you could do this and Halliburton. And then we also have Buddy Hield for under, rebounds and assists at 7.5. I'd be fine with that. Bogdanovich, less than fantasy score. I would say that Thompson for over fantasy score, if that's made available, would correlate with that, and vice versa. Like, I don't see those two coexisting together too well. And then I do like Duncan Robinson in this spot. I expect that to continue, that production that he's had. The shot attempts will be there. It's just whether or not he's going to be hitting those buckets. A lot of his fantasy score is predicated on him scoring some buckets, though. He has stepped up with Tyler Hero and Bam off the court. That's going to be all for today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. We did get to 100 likes on yesterday's video. I mentioned I would come out with a video around 1 p.m. The issue is it was about like 3:30 p.m. when that happened, and I couldn't come out with another video. I do want to do that on Taco Tuesday, guys. I want to come out with a second video. Hopefully I can continue to do an early one and then an afternoon one. We'll see. But again, it's probably going to be around 1 p.m. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys want access to the 9to5sports.com PrizePicks and Underdog cheat sheet, available for just $10 a month. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.